How's it going, everybody? Lampini here again, here to give you my Week 8 2024 NFL predictions. Week 7 was another great week of football, a great week for the Commanders, and a great week for some other teams. So without further ado, let's go ahead and review how my predictions went. So I ended up doing pretty well. I was 13-2 with my predictions. The only two games that I got wrong was the Seahawks ended up beating the Falcons, and the Cardinals at home beat the Chargers. So I'll have a little bit to say in these two games with these four teams about what I may have gotten those predictions wrong for, but everything else I got right. I correctly predicted that the Lions were going to beat the Vikings, which I'm really proud about that. And then everything else was pretty par for the course. Like, there was no way the Jets were going to beat the Steelers. The Panthers were certainly not going to beat the Commanders. And, you know, it was a pretty easy week to predict, honestly. My overall prediction is 74-34. So I have picked 40 more games right than I have wrong. So, I mean, what else can I say from week to week? I'm incredible. I'm a football genius. I know how to pick these games, and if you want to make some DraftKings bets, watch this video first, and then it just gives you a clear picture on what games to predict, and then you'll make money. So, watching my videos will literally make you money. So with that being said, let's go into Thursday Night Football. So for Thursday night, we have the Minnesota Vikings at the Los Angeles Rams. So the Vikings suffered their first loss of the season. They're now 5-1. They lost to the Lions 31-29 on a last-second field goal by, what's his name? Jake Bates, I think, the UFL guy who kicked back-to-back 64-yard field goals. So a very impressive showing there. Sam Darnold had another pretty good game. He was 22 of 27 for 259 yards, a touchdown, and interception, 103.5 passer rating. And then Aaron Jones had 14 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown. Good showing there. And then Justin Jefferson had 7 receptions for 81 yards and a touchdown. So pretty good showing by the Vikings still. In defeat, pretty good showing. They just lost out to a better team just by a last-second field goal. So right now, Vikings and Lions look like they're going to make the playoffs. Whether whoever's going to get the bye is what it's looking like with them. Remains to be seen. But right now, Vikings, I think, are still a very strong team. The fact that they lost the game and still played a very good game, like, they still got a lot left for them. As for the Rams, Cooper Kupp is supposed to be coming back. Kyren Williams had 2 rushing touchdowns, so he's having a pretty good season. The Rams beat the Raiders 20-15, but I don't really think that's much of an accomplishment because the Raiders are one of the worst teams in the league right now. They're not rebuilding. They're not making a run. They are just in mediocrity hell. They need to do something to reinvigorate their franchise, but we'll go over that when we review the Raiders game. This is going to be a pretty easy prediction for me. I think the Vikings are going to win. The Vikings, like I said, are a premier team right now, and until proven otherwise, I'm going to be predicting them against a lot of these other teams. So I'm going with the Vikings. So next up, we have the Philadelphia Eagles at the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bengals have done a very good job digging themselves out of that 1-4 hole. They're now 3-4, and a win against the Eagles here would pretty much get them back into the wild card race. They're not going to win their division, but getting back to 500 with this amount of the season left, you still have a whole half of the season left, right? There's a lot that they can get done. As for the Eagles, they had a very strong game against the Giants where they won 28-3. But unlike the Patriots, the Giants did not come back and win. Jalen Hurts was 10 of 14 for 114 yards and a touchdown, 119.3 passer rating. The real star of the show was Saquon Barkley, who had 17 carries for 176 yards and a touchdown. That's his return to MetLife. Incredible performance by Saquon. Very, very impressive. The Bengals beat the Browns 21-14, who, incidentally, the Cleveland Browns have not scored over 20 points through this entire season. It's no wonder they're 1-5. But there was that. Joe Burrow was 15 of 25 for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns, 108.9 passer rating. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both caught those 2 touchdowns from them. This is a very, very interesting game because the Eagles are 4-2, but I don't think that they're a very good 4-2 with how they've been playing recently. So I am actually going to go with the Bengals on this one. The Bengals offense has proven that it is extremely prolific, and I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I just don't know if the Eagles offense is going to be able to keep up with what Joe Burrow is doing right now, because Joe Burrow is an MVP candidate right now with how he's been playing. He's been doing extremely well. Judging by this next game, there's 2 other MVP candidates that might overshadow him. But I'm going with the Bengals on this one. And then the real question is, if the Bengals beat the Eagles and the Eagles lose, Do the Eagles fire Nick Sirianni, or do they stay with him because the Eagles are still doing so well? That remains to be seen, but I'm going with the Bengals on this one. So next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens at the Cleveland Browns. So the Ravens game just finished up. It's Tuesday as I'm recording this. They beat the Buccaneers 41-31. Now, that may seem like a lot closer of a game than it was, but the Buccaneers scored 21 points in the second half, in the fourth quarter even. So the Ravens scored 17 points in the second and third quarter. They dominated the game. Lamar Jackson was 17 of 22 for 281 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 158.1 passer rating. Lamar's MVP candidacy last year was kind of weak compared to MVPs, but I mean, if he keeps having games like this, he's going to be an MVP frontrunner. And I tell you who else is going to be an MVP frontrunner? Derrick Henry had 15 carries for 169 yards. He averaged 11.3 yards a carry. Derrick Henry currently leads the league in rushing attempts, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, scrimmage touchdowns, rushing yards per game, and the longest rush. He rushed for 81 yards this year. I mean, you're looking at MVP and Offensive Player of the Year right here with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. It is insane. Now, if Lamar Jackson kind of stalls a little bit and just has a subpar season, if Derrick Henry has 2,000 yards from scrimmage and like 20-something rushing touchdowns, you have to give him the MVP. You just have to. Like, I don't know what else he has to do. Like, a 2,000 yards from scrimmage and... Sorry about that, guys. It turns out my phone ran out of storage, so I had to delete a couple things to keep the video going. Sorry about all the ranting that I went on that you guys missed. I went like 3 games in, so I'm going to have to re-predict everything, but we'll be fine. They weren't very important games. So, basically, now I got cut off in front of my Derrick Henry rant, so we're just going to jump over to Browns. Deshaun Watson got injured, but he had a pretty good game. Snapped his Achilles, though, and it's the end of the season for him. But incidentally, he was having the best game of his season so far. He was 15 of 17 for 128 yards, 98 passer rating. So he was doing all right, but like, here's the big issue. So like, you pay all this money, you do all this draft capital. Not only does he suck, but he can't stay healthy either. So at what point do they just cut their losses and kick him to the curb? Because there is no benefit for the Browns to have Deshaun Watson on their roster at this point. It boggles the mind, but the Ravens are going to win this game. And Jameis Winston is going to play, and I think Jameis Winston is going to give them a better chance to win, but I don't think they're going to, obviously. It's going to be a very interesting game, but I think that this is going to be an example of the Ravens and Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson running up the scoreboard. I'm going with the Ravens. So next up, we have the Tennessee Titans at the Detroit Lions. Like I said previously, the Lions beat the Vikings, so now the Lions are the #1 seed in the NFC. Every single game the Lions have played, they have been incredibly strong. I think that, not to spoil the power rankings, but when we look at the #1 and #2 teams in the NFL, it's the Lions and the Ravens. Those are the 2 best teams in each conference, in my opinion. Point differentials will be damned, which we'll go over in a little bit. I looked at the point differentials. You're going to be very excited to see them. Well, I will be at least. But a great game by the Lions. Jared Goff was 22 of 25, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, 140 passer rating. Jahmyr Gibbs had 15 carries for 116 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown had 8 receptions for 112 yards and a touchdown. So, an incredible showing by the skill position players in Detroit. I think they're going to run over the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans are now starting Mason Rudolph as their quarterback because Will Levis is such a bust. They're a franchise in disarray. They need to commit to a full rebuild. Now that they don't have Derrick Henry, they don't really have much of anything. I'm going with the Lions on this one. I don't see the Titans winning. So this next game, we have the Arizona Cardinals at the Miami Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa is expected to start this game. I find it interesting that everyone gives Tua Tagovailoa so much crap about, he's a physically limited quarterback, this, that, he sucks. But when the Dolphins don't have Tua, they crumble. They become a bottom 5 team. So see what you want about him being a game manager or an average quarterback or someone with a noodle arm. Whatever he brings to that team, it brings success. As for the Cardinals, we had a very surprising victory against the Chargers, in my opinion. Kyler Murray was 14 to 26, 145 yards, a touchdown, a pick, and a 67 passer rating. I don't know, man. I think he's just, it's just like, I don't know. He's all like, Kyler Murray's okay, but he's just like, he's the Cardinals franchise quarterback, but I don't think he's good enough to be that. Like we always say, the Cardinals are rebuilding with with Jonathan Gannon and all this stuff, but like they still haven't shown dividends. They're in the middle of his second season. If they get to the third season and they are still in this same position, they need to move on to somebody else because they are not going anywhere. That being said, I am going to go with the Cardinals on this one. I think this is just a lost season for the Dolphins. I think Tua is going to be a bit rusty. And if he gets hurt again, then my God. But yeah, I'm going with the Cardinals. So for this next game, we have the New York Jets at the New England Patriots. So the Patriots are coming off the loss, and so are the Jets. But the Jets are coming off of a lot worse of one. Aaron Rodgers with 24-39 for a touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 70 passer rating. Aaron Rodgers is not the man that we thought he was, and he's not the man that he used to be. He is going to be turning 41 soon, and it's very hard for a quarterback into his 40s to still be successful. That's why what Tom Brady was able to do, not only succeeding into his 40s, but like leading the league in pass attempts at 40 and still having a good amount of interceptions, or not a lot of interceptions, is what's so impressive about what he was able to do. Drake May also played well. I think the Patriots are in a better position to succeed. He's doing better than I expected. He was 26 of 37 for 276 yards and 2 touchdowns for 109.7 passer rating. So Drake May might be the future there. He might be someone you can kind of build the team around. I think it'd be very embarrassing if the Jets lost to the Patriots. Their season would officially be over if the Patriots beat them. But considering how the Jets did against them a couple weeks ago, I am going to go with the Jets. I do think they are still going to win because the Patriots are such a soft team, as Gerard Mayo described them. I'm going with the Jets. Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. These two played each other very recently, with the Falcons coming up with the W. Both these teams are coming off of losses, though. The Falcons lost pretty badly to the Seahawks, 34-14, and then the Ravens beat the Buccaneers, as previously mentioned. So, as for the Falcons, Kirk Cousins had a pretty poor game. He was 24-35, 232 yards, a touchdown with 2 interceptions, 72.6 passer rating. Bijan Robinson had a good game, though. 21 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. They're finally starting to work him. This is going to be very interesting because the Falcons did beat the Buccaneers last time. I believe we went into overtime. But the Buccaneers cannot afford to drop another game and drop 2 in a row. And I don't think it's going to happen. However, they are injured to hell. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans both sustained injuries in the Baltimore Ravens game. So it remains to be seen with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, for that matter, how long they're going to be out for, if they're going to be out at all. So this is going to be a very conditional pick for me. If those two are out and don't play, I'm going with the Falcons. If they do play, then the Buccaneers are going to win. Based on, I haven't read any injury reports. I just woke up. It's Tuesday morning, so I haven't really looked at anything to see what's going on with Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. But I am going to go with the Falcons. They beat the Buccaneers last time. I think they have a chance to beat them again, especially if there's no Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. Baker Mayfield has nobody to throw to. And even when he does have them to throw to, he throws 2 interceptions against the Ravens. I think the Falcons are going to win, and they are going to take control of that division. So next up, we have the Green Bay Packers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. So both these teams are coming off of wins, and the Packers came off of a hard-fought battle against the Houston Texans. The Packers are looking like a really strong team. They're 5-2, but the Vikings and the Lions are in their division, and those are probably the 2 best teams in the conference. So they're at a point right now where they just have to keep playing good football and get that wild card spot, because if you're a couple games ahead and you are guaranteed to get that wild card spot, just keep playing good football. But the Jaguars, like I said, they had probably their best game. Trevor Lawrence was 15 of 20 for 193 yards and a touchdown, 121.5 passer rating. That just goes to show that Trevor Lawrence is capable of having good games still, and I think it's just the team around him not being very good. Tank Bigsby had 26 carries for 118 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, which was very impressive. And then Brian Thomas Jr. Still having a very solid rookie campaign, 5 receptions, 89 yards and a touchdown. They scored 32 points, so now they are 2-5. But that's the Texans division, so they're not really going to threaten that at all. But I do think the Packers are still going to win. They're a young team, and what they were able to do against the Houston Texans, I think deserves to be commended, because That's very impressive that they were able to beat the Houston Texans when the Texans are a Super Bowl caliber team. So I think the Packers are really going to sneak up on some people. I'm going with the Packers on this one. So next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans. The Colts are coming off of a victory against the Miami Dolphins, and Anthony Richardson is back in the lineup. But again, he didn't have a very good game. He was 10 of 24 for 129 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 59.2 passer rating. He's completing less than half of his passes. He's a physical gift, but he needs to put it together and actually be a quarterback. So I don't know what is going on. The Colts are technically in the wild card run right now because they're 4-3, but they are not going to do it against the Houston Texans, who are going to win this game. CJ Stroud had a pretty poor game. He was 10 of 21 for 86 yards, and that's it. 58.8 passer rating. So he didn't do a whole lot in the game, but they scored 22 points, still had a chance to win. Joe Mixon with 25 carries, 115 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So a lot of the scoring came on his back. But even with a poor game from CJ Stroud, they were still able to put up a tough game against the Packers and almost won. So even when your quarterback doesn't have a good game, you still find a way to score points and almost win, which is a mark of a good team. I'm going with the Texans on this one. I know it's a divisional matchup. I know that when that kind of stuff happens, the Colts have a good chance. But the Texans are also undefeated at home. I'm going with the Texans on this one. I think they are going to win. So now comes the game that I've wanted to talk about. We have the Chicago Bears at the Washington Commanders. The Commanders are 5-2. The Bears are 4-2. Both of these teams are coming off of huge victories. The Commanders put up a 40-piece with a backup quarterback against the Carolina Panthers. We only gave up 7 points. The Bears won 35-16 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. All that's on my mind right now is Jayden Daniels okay? He hurt himself on the first play of the game, injured his ribs. They had an MRI. It's not serious, but they did say that he is week to week. So is he going to play? I have no idea. Marcus Mariota has shown that he can run the offense, but like, F that. I want to see Jayden Daniels play. F that. I want to see Jayden Daniels play. But we had a pick 6 in that game. Our offense is working on all cylinders. Yes, it was against the Panthers, but you play the worst team in the league, it should end up 40-7. You know what I mean? I think that is good for the Commanders. Good showing there. They're currently the number 2 seed in the NFC. I do think the Vikings and the Lions are both better than the Commanders, which is why when we get to the power rankings, we'll go over where all these teams are at. But another great showing by the Commanders. Their defense did very well to stop the Panthers. It was a snuff film of a game. It was brutal. As for the Bears, they did very well. Caleb Williams had his best game as a starter. He was 23 of 29, 226 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception for 124.4 passer rating. Cole Kmet and Keenan Allen both caught 2 touchdowns, so that's where his 4 touchdowns came from. And then DeAndre Swift had a pretty good game as well. Here's what I'm thinking with this game. In theory, both of these teams are in similar positions in their rebuild. They got their rookie quarterback. They got pieces around them to succeed. They've both been playing well. They've both been beating bad teams. They have both been doing extremely well. Now it's time to see how far into both teams' rebuilds are they? Because like I said, on paper, these teams are similar, So that's why I really want Jayden Daniels to play so we can play the Bears at full strength. And then after this, we have the Steelers. It's possible for us to go 7-2, It's a really hard game to call because I don't know if Jayden Daniels is going to play. If Jayden Daniels doesn't play, we got to hope for Marcus Mariota. I'm not saying I don't have any faith in him, but Jayden Daniels obviously gives us a better chance to win. I am going to go with the Commanders on this one because I really want them to win. The Bears have looked good. They've had a good defense. If Marcus Mariota plays, if Jayden Daniels doesn't, and the Bears win, then I'm going to say, well, we lost with our backup quarterback. If Jayden Daniels does play and we lose, then that's a pretty poor loss, So I am still going to go with the Commanders on this one to improve to 6-2. Next up, we have the New Orleans Saints at the LA Chargers. The Saints have dropped 5 in a row since their impressive 2-0 start. Yes, they are injured to hell. So I will say that they have tons of injuries, which is probably why they're losing. Spoiler, I am going to go with the Chargers on this one. It's at home. The Chargers are 3-3. After losing to the Cardinals, they need a win. Justin Herbert has just been okay. He has like 6 touchdowns for 1 interception, which I guess is all right, but he's not like it's turning into a very mid season for Justin Herbert, and it seems like he's going to have a Phillip Rivers type career where he has good yards, he's a talented quarterback, but the Chargers franchise just holds him back. I'm going with the Chargers on this one. Not too much to say about this game. They're going to improve to 4-3. They're trying to fight for that 7th seed, but the AFC and the NFC, for that matter, are very competitive. So they need to get a couple wins together, and this is the game they frankly should win. So I'm going with the Chargers. And then next up, we have the Buffalo Bills at the Seattle Seahawks. Right now, the Seahawks are the head of their division, as is the Buffalo Bills at 5-2. Josh Allen and the Bills beat the Titans 34-10. Josh Allen was 21 of 33 for 323 yards, 2 touchdowns, 116.1 passer rating. Fun fact, Josh Allen has still yet to throw an interception this season, which I think is very impressive. If that continues, then he is a front runner for the MVP as well. Like, imagine Josh Allen throws 30 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. Like, I think that just deserves an MVP to go a season without throwing an interception. He's got to win something for that. But he had a good game. Keon Coleman also had a pretty good game. 4 receptions for 125 yards. I think the Bills are, like, I think we know who the Bills are at this point in the regular season. They're a lot like the Ravens. They're going to win. They're going to do well in the regular season. They're going to crush people. They're going to win games that they need to win. It all just matters on how they do in the playoffs. So I do think that they are going to win this game against the Seahawks. Like, that whole division is just very weak, the NFC West. I think that the Bills are going to win. I think the Seahawks are a good team, but I think they're taking advantage of a bad division, and they're going to be one and done in the playoffs. I am going with the Buffalo Bills to win this one. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers at the Denver Broncos. It is a Super Bowl 50 rematch, and both of these teams have been cursed ever since then. The Panthers made the playoffs, a wild card exit in like 2017, I think. But the Broncos have not made the playoffs since, and both teams are just in disarray in terms of their management. They both made terrible trades that have tanked their franchises, and that's just kind of how it's been. But the Broncos have strung together some pretty good wins. They beat the Saints 33-10. Bo Nix is still not looked all that great, though. 16 of 26 for 164 yards, a 79.6 passer rating. Javonte Williams had 2 rushing touchdowns, which was good. Andy Dalton threw 2 interceptions against us. I think the Broncos are going to win this game. Like, the Panthers could go 1-15. With how they're looking, they could go 1-15. They do not look good. It's going to be another easy win for the Broncos. The Broncos are going to improve to 5-3. They're somehow going to make it to 5-3. I feel like they just have a very easy schedule. They're beating up on a lot of bad teams, so I think that's going to continue for them. I'm going with the Broncos on this one. They're going to beat the Panthers. Next up, we have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Chiefs beat the 49ers, and they are 6-0. They are still undefeated somehow, despite Patrick Mahomes having the worst season of his career so far. He was 16 of 27 for 154 yards and 2 interceptions for a 44.4 passer rating. He now has 6 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, and I was questioning if he would be able to turn it around coming in after his bye week, but alas, he hasn't, and he is still down, still not doing very well. But the Chiefs are still undefeated because their defense is bailing them out, and they're still doing very well. On offense, they still scored 28 points, and Kareem Hunt had 2 rushing touchdowns. So they are still scoring, and they're getting it done somehow. And that just comes with being well coached. This is why a dynasty isn't just the quarterback. It's the defense, it's the special teams, it's all 3 phases, because one phase can make up for another. Mahomes does not have a good offense. He doesn't have a lot of talent on there. Juju Smith-Schuster's the main wide receiver. And then Xavier Worthy, we haven't really seen much from him outside of some gadget plays. But they're going to beat the Raiders. The Raiders are not a good team. Gardner Minshew threw 3 interceptions. Aiden O'Connell went back in again. Like, when those are your 2 options at quarterback, you're not going to go anywhere. It's not going to be a good showing. I think the Chiefs are going to improve to 7-0 and win, but they're not the best team in the NFL, is how I would look at it. So I'm still going with the Chiefs, though. So next up, we have Sunday Night Football. This is a game that would have killed in the early 90s, but now it's between 2 past their prime teams. We have the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. They're playing in San Francisco. The Cowboys are coming off of a bye week that they unfortunately lost, bless their heart. And they got thrashed by the Detroit Lions 47-9. It's the worst home loss in the Jerry Jones era. Dak Prescott threw 2 interceptions. Cooper Rush threw an interception for good measure. Both guys finished with a 42.2 passer rating. I mean, I love to see it. The Cowboys are a mess right now. Mike McCarthy has to go. Jerry Jones has to keel over and die. Like, they're in big trouble. So are the San Francisco 49ers, but for a different reason. Brock Purdy was 17 of 31 for 212 yards, 3 interceptions, and a 36.7 passer rating. But their issue is injuries. This reminds me a lot of the 2020 49ers season where they finished 6-10. It wasn't because they were a bad team. They were just ravaged by injuries, and Nick Mullins was their leading passer, and that should say everything that needs to be said. This should be a win for the Cowboys just because they're a healthier team and they're coming off of a bye. And for that reason, I am going to go with the Cowboys. I wanted to go with the 49ers. It's at home, but I think the 49ers are too battered and bruised, and the Cowboys are going to be able to take advantage of that, and I think they're going to win. Last but not least, we have a Monday night game. We have the New York Giants at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers scored 37 points against the Jets, which was a very impressive showing. Russell Wilson is looked pretty good in his debut. 16 of 29, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, 109 passer rating. Najee Harris had 102 yards off of 21 carries and a touchdown. And then George Pickens had 5 receptions for 111 yards and a touchdown. The deep ball of Russell Wilson and the contested catchability of George Pickens is proving to be a really, really good combination. So right now, Russell Wilson did look good as the Steelers quarterback. What I think it is there's 3 different tiers of quarterback. There is you win because of, you win with, and you win in spite of. So you would say, like, you win because of are the elite quarterbacks, the franchise quarterbacks. You win with, I'd say, are the game managers or guys that are still good, they do enough to get by. For example, Jared Goff is a quarterback you win with. Dak Prescott is a quarterback you win with. Patrick Mahomes is a quarterback you win because of. Josh Allen is a quarterback you win because of. Lamar Jackson is a quarterback you win because of. And then you win in spite of is Daniel Jones, right? So those are like the tiers of quarterback. And what I'm getting to with that is I think Russell Wilson his entire career has been a you win with quarterback. I think he's an elite game manager. You put him in a situation to succeed, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's able to thrive. The Steeler way, I think, is a real thing. They have put in they have a system in place with their team where they're nice and sturdy, nice and stable, tried and true, strong defense, strong line. You have a strong running back, and you may be 9-8 or 10-7 some years and not look impressive, but when the pieces come together, you go from being 9-8, 10-7 to 11-4, 12-3. And I think that's what's happening right now. 12-5, excuse me. And that's what we have here. So the Giants only scored 3 points. They took Daniel Jones out for Drew Lock. It's about damn time they benched him. They got to give Daniel Jones a rest and just admit that they made a mistake and go for someone new in either the draft or get yourself an old veteran bridge quarterback. I don't know what you have to do, but this rebuild needs to start now. I think the Steelers are going to win. It's going to be a pretty easy showing for them. They're going to improve to 5-2, or sorry, they already are 5-2. They're going to improve to 6-2, and they're making a strong running for the postseason. So there are my predictions for Week 8, and now it is about time we go over the point differentials. Now we're going to start off with the AFC point differentials. Okay, so right now, let's see what we're looking at here. The Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers, along with the Kansas City Chiefs, are the top 3 teams right now. So you got 63, 60, and 43-plus point differentials for each. The Buffalo Bills still have the highest point differential in the AFC. They are 5-2, though, along with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you have the Baltimore Ravens all the way down here at 5-2. Now, they have allowed a lot of points, the Baltimore Ravens, which is why their point differential is only 38. But if you look at them, their offense has been dynamo. It is first in yards and points. but their defense is 26th in points allowed and 23rd in yards allowed. Hence why their point differential is so low. But their offense is so good that I think that, like, they're tied with the Commanders right now for the most points scored. And I think that that's just where they are right now. The Ravens and Commanders are two very similar teams, which is what I'd say there. And at the very bottom, you have the Las Vegas Raiders, New England Patriots, and Miami Dolphins, which looks about right. Interestingly enough, if you look at the Houston Texans here, they are a +6 at 5-2. That's just because they've been winning a lot of close games, and I think their 2 losses were blowouts. But I think that that's very deceiving. I think that's where point differentials can be a bit deceiving. I still think they're a very good team. Now, boom, NFC. Would you look at that? The Washington Commanders have the highest point differential in not only the NFC, but the entire NFL at +66. We're in the Twilight Zone, guys. This is incredible. I just hope Jayden Daniels is healthy and he plays against the Bears this week. Coming up behind him is the NFC North: Detroit Lions, Minnesota Vikings, Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers. 62, 61, 47, 43 plus point differentials, respectively. Behind them, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, it's I'd say the NFC is a lot stronger than the AFC this year. Looking into the Washington Commanders, just because they're my team, I want to go take a look at them here, see where they are in terms of their offense and their defense. So right now, they are first in points, 4th in yards, and then because they only allowed 7 points against the Panthers, their defensive rankings have gotten a lot better. They're 15th in points allowed and 16th in yards allowed, which is all well and good, but they've been playing some pretty bad teams, and they still gave up 30 points against the Ravens. So I think that's a bit deceptive. I think their defense is not. I don't think their defense is slightly above average like the statistics say, but that being said, they have been incredibly impressive, and I still think that they are going to find a spot. Spoiler: I think they're going to find a spot on the power rankings this time around. So with that being said, it's about that time. We are going to go over the power rankings. All right. So let's think about this. Let's think about this logistically here. I think number 1 is going to go to the Detroit Lions. I think that they have been the only loss they lost to was a last-second field goal, I believe. Positive points, +62 point differential. They are just doing incredibly. And if we look at how their offense and defense stack up, they are both top 10. They're 3rd in points, 2nd in yards, and then their defense is 9th in points allowed, 18th in yards allowed. So they are probably the most stable team right now. That's why I have them at number 1. And number 2, I have the Baltimore Ravens because their offense is just so unstoppable. It is incredible. Their offense is putting up 40 pieces on everybody. I think they're just going to get better and better. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are MVP candidates, the both of them. Other MVP candidates, I think, would be Joe Burrow or Josh Allen, but everybody else is just like, it's those two right now. And with that kind of dominance, I think that the Ravens, and what they've been able to do these last 5 games, winning 5 games, they're looking like one of the best teams in the NFL. They're definitely the best team in the AFC, despite their point differential. Number 3, I'm going to go with the Chiefs. Once again, the Chiefs are 6-0. They're still winning these games despite ugly stats from Mahomes. If you look at their team stats, they're 13th in points, 10th in yards, and then they're 5th in points allowed. So their defense is carrying them. Not necessarily carrying them. They have a slightly above average offense despite Mahomes not doing very well. But they're very quietly getting to 6-0, which is why I think that they're still number 3. Number 4, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. They may have lost to the Lions, but they fought hard, so I would still put them in the top 5 power rankings. And they've shown no signs. They haven't had a bad loss yet, so I'm still going with them. And at number 5, I'm going to go with the Washington Commanders. They still have the number 1 offense in the league. No, well, second to only the Ravens, but they're 1st in points, tied for 1st in points. Their defense is getting better. The fact that they were still able to move the ball and dominate as much as they did with a backup quarterback tells me that they still have a very good team. not just they have a good system in place as well in terms of a playbook, because Marcus Mariota has a similar skill set to Jayden Daniels, so he's able to run a lot of the same plays. But I still want Jayden Daniels to be back. I'm going to be following that all week. They said he's week to week, but they said the rib injury isn't serious. Put a flak jacket on him. Hopefully he'll be okay. I have the Commanders at number 5 in the power rankings. So if we go over it again, we have the Detroit Lions, Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs, Minnesota Vikings, and Washington Commanders as our top 5 power rankings. So that's been week 8 of the NFL season. We just wrapped up week 7. We're approaching the halfway point of the NFL season, which I'm very sad about. It seems like it's just begun, but it's been a great season for the Washington Commanders, and hopefully they can keep this up. I will see you guys later.